What up everyone, Clayton here, and today we're back with another Skyrim build. Today's build is called the Sapper. The Sapper is a dark elf vampire who uses his vampire powers as well as enchantments on his blades to steal the life force from his enemies, whether that be health, stamina, magicka, or even the soul of his enemies. The Sapper was a descendant of the House Halalu, which was a great house of Morrowind, until they were stripped of this title during the 4th era. They had close ties to the Empire, and when the Empire removed its troops from Morrowind during the Oblivion Crisis, which left Morrowind defenseless, House Halalu was blamed. The Sapper knew about his family's past and wanted to gain back the power and the fame they had before. He worked as an apprentice to an enchanter in Morrowind, and this is where he learned his craft of enchantment to enchant weapons and armor, but he needed more power. He joined a vampire cult in Morrowind to become more powerful. This got him kicked out of his town. He then headed to Skyrim to join Harkon, the vampire lord at Castle Volkihar, and was caught crossing the border. The skills that you need for this build is Destruction, Restoration, Enchanting, Smithing, and One-Handed. Destruction's a little bit weird for this character. This character doesn't really use a lot of destruction spells, besides the vampiric drain it gets from being a vampire, so you don't really need any perks. You pretty much only need the dual casting perk for Destruction. Restoration is pretty important because this is how you're going to be able to regen health, magicka, and stamina during the day. And how might you do this, you say? You have the Respite perk to be able to heal yourself. This also restores stamina, which increases your health and stamina during daylight, so you can keep those regenning, as well as Recovery, which increases magicka regen by 50%, which allows you to regen magicka even during the day. Enchanting's pretty obvious since this guy is kind of an apprentice to enchanter and has skills of enchanting. This makes sure you can enchant your weapons and armor with the correct enchantments. Smithing is pretty obvious, just to help you out with your weapons and armor, making them a little bit better. And One-Handed is the most important skill because this build is actually kind of a dual wield character. You do wield 2 swords, so you want to make sure you get the dual wield perks, as well as any perks that makes your one-handed do more damage. Maybe even the bladesmen, since they are going to be swords. So the weapon and armor and spells that you'll be using for this build are kind of unique, and they kind of follow the Dawnguard DLC. So if you do not have the Dawnguard DLC, you can kind of implement whatever you really feel like this character would have for its weapon, armor, and maybe even his spells. So the weapons that you'll be using is Lord Harkon's sword. This sword is kind of unique in that it will give you absorb health, magicka, and stamina as long as you're a vampire who wields this. This blade kind of looks like a Blades sword or an Akaviri sword, so that's why I take a Blade sword as your second offhand item. I enchant this with Soul Trap as well as Absorb Health to make sure you have enough regen and you sap the life essence of your opponent. For the armor, I use Royal Vampire Armor as well as pretty much any armor you can get that's vampire, so maybe vampire gloves, vampire boots, and maybe a vampire hood. I chose to use Circlet instead though. For spells, it's pretty obvious. You want to make sure you get your vampiric drain to the highest power. That way you can do as much damage and take as much health from the opponent. You do this by becoming different stages of vampirism. At level 5 is when you get your most damage and lifesteal. Also, the spells you can use is healing spells to keep yourself alive, as well as any healing or restoration spells that you get from the Dawnguard DLC that does damage to the undead, which is pretty good. The standing stone that you'll be using is the Lady Stone, because this allows you to regen health and stamina 25% faster, which allows you to regen stuff during the day. The stats you'll have is kind of unique to whatever you feel like. It is your preference. You're a vampire, so your stats are lowered. If you want to go towards more of a restoration and casting vampire, put more points in the magicka. If you want to put more points in health to stay alive, do that. More power attack, stamina. You also have the backhand of having enchantments on your weapons and armor to allow you to have either more magicka, health, or stamina, so you can kind of base your build around what you prefer to use on your armor enchantments. So for the gameplay, it's pretty simple. You use your 2 dual-wield swords, your Harkon sword, and your Blade sword that you enchant. These blades are kind of what you can use to stay alive during the day. They regen health, stamina, and magicka on the Harkon sword, and health on the offhand sword, as well as the Soul Trap to fill any soul gems you have to be able to recharge those items, which I think is kind of a good way to have it, since that way you can get more souls and make sure these things stay enchanted. And you can fight during the day with this stuff, since you get all this health, magic, and stamina back. You can cast spells, you can even use equilibrium if you want to change your health into magicka and then heal yourself back up to full health. It's just kind of whatever you want as a vampire, and I think this is kind of a really unique build that makes it so you steal the life force of an enemy, and you also can be a vampire and stay alive during the day. So if you guys enjoyed this build, and if you did, make sure to leave a like on it because it would really make me happy, and subscribe for more. And also, check out these 2 builds here, and I will definitely make sure to put the annotations here, but usually I forget, but I'll make sure this time. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and this is Clayton, signing out.